guys, I'm Hannah. In this video, I'm going to be walking you through the creation of my Project Ebon Blade Whitemane breastplate. I started with Kamui Cosplay's space breastplate pattern. I cut out all the pieces I needed, but I'm going to be altering this pattern to what I need, so I don't need the middle chest piece or other parts. After that, I trace this out onto 6mm EVA foam with a silver Sharpie. Don't forget to trace the tabs, they're really important. After everything's traced out, I will be cutting this out with a razor knife. I use a heat gun on all of these pieces before gluing them together to close the cells and give it a smoother texture. I also sand some of the edges and heat it once more just to make sure everything's smooth and will go together perfectly. I apply a thin layer of contact cement and let it dry. I spread out the contact cement with spare foam scraps to keep it even. I always use 2 layers for extra strength. I line up the pieces with the tabs to make sure they curve correctly and are in the right position. Keeping your contact cement in a squeezable bottle is a good way to make sure you have the most control over it. To keep my seams even, I always press on it with my thumb and make sure that everything is smooth and together as it should be. After I put the base together, I trace out an oval and cut it out for the skull base. Using the original space breastplate pattern, I draw out an additional piece to attach to the bottom. It always takes a couple tries and a little bit of sanding to make sure that everything lines up properly, but it's always worth it in the end. I used TNT Cosplay's foam bevels to create the base for the bones on the top of the cups. Here is good footage of me completely forgetting how to seal foam. This is absolutely not correct and my sick brain really got to me for this. I used way too much, but I was able to luckily sand it down smooth in the end. I cut out individual bone details with a hot knife, and then after that I used a heat gun to open the cuts more. I used the blunt handle of the hot knife to weather and sculpt out the details that I wanted in it. I use this technique a lot with more organic kind of materials such as bone or rock and stone, and I find that it works pretty well. Another way to get this detail is to Dremel it, but I have a really bad experience with those, so I usually use the hot knife instead. This is also my first time using Cosplay Crafts cosplay clay. Due to the newness of the product for me, I'd like to add a little bit of a mini review when I work with it. I'm not a great sculptor, but after a very short learning period, the stuff was almost too easy to do. Usually scroll work takes like over half of a sheet of Worbla for me and leaves me with like really burnt hands and a lot of bad detail. This made beveled scroll work take like 2 seconds to do, and it was crazy. I hot glued a 3D printed skull onto the oval that I cut out. I'll leave a link to it in the description if you'd like to print it out for yourself. I think these are going to work out really well for any Ebon Blade projects. I also have some of the Hoku props, 3D printed skulls, and they're turning out really well as well. But I didn't have those for this part, so... What worked best for me was using a paintbrush with water to make it a little bit more malleable and then stick to the foam better. The clay comes with a mini set of sculpting tools and makes detail work so much easier. Here's a little bit more detail about them since I have a lot more time than I thought I did. Shipping from Cosplay Crafts is free in the US and it gets here really fast. They sell a lot of useful cosplay supplies. I think they're a fairly new company in my understanding, but I've noticed that they really love and support the cosplay community as a whole. After the final details, I went on to go ahead and plasti dip it. If you'd like to watch the painting process for this piece, stay tuned. That's coming up next. I want to thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!